How did you actually get into the sport of bodybuilding? What pushed you into that direction?
Funny because it was a bucket list thing, right? So it's like, hey, I think I have the discipline to do this. Like, I think I could compete one day and get it done, and it's gonna work. And I am like a very strong believer of visualizing your goals and writing them down and looking at them all the time. So I started like speaking about it, and I was going to the gym. I've always played sports and everything, so I've been active always. But I started going to the gym, and sure enough, weeks after I said I'm gonna do this one day, one of the trainers comes and he's like, "Hey, have you ever thought about competing?" And I'm like, "Maybe this is the sign. This is it." Because I didn't even know where to start. Like, who do I talk to? How do I get information? Right. So he comes to me and he's like, "I'm a coach, and I think you've got what you need for to do a show." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. When is it? 12 weeks." And I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." In 12 weeks, sure enough, I did my first competition, and I went in. I I was very new, so it was different, right? It was tough, but I went in, I did that first show. I am not that extroverted person that like I don't just talk to people. I'm a little bit more reserved, and bodybuilding wasn't as big as it is right now in South America. So then 6 weeks out, I'm like, how am I gonna tell my parents that I'm about to step on stage on a bikini, wearing heels, or the majority of the panel were males at that point to judge my physique. Like it was a hard conversation to have. I came from a Catholic background, Catholic school kind of thing. So I talked to my mom and she's like, well, you're grown up, whatever, do your thing. And then once you're done, you're done. That's it. That's where I met John. So that was my first show. And then John, my husband, that was his second or third show. Started dating, and then it was easy because then he was into the gym, I was into the gym, so it was like it was easy to do. And then I was like, there's more. Like I competed, and then all this Pandora box opened where it's like, hey, this is just a regional show. You could do a regional show next time and you can win, and then after a regional show, you could do a national show, and like then all the bodybuilding stuff started coming out, right? So I decided I was going to do more regional shows, and my goal in mind was I'm not going on a national stage until I win a regional overall, which means absolutely nothing. You can be the best one that day at that specific show. Bodybuilding is a very subjective sport, especially in bikini. So they're going to judge you based on whoever's next to you that day. You could have been the best in South Carolina, which is the show that I did and won. And then I step on stage in my first national show 2, 3 weeks later, and I was dead last. So like it really doesn't mean anything. That was 2020. So COVID hits and we freak out because it was like I feel like a lot of people freaked out, but for me, I worked in the healthcare side at that point. And a regional manager came in and he's like, "Hey, listen, everybody's going home. We're furlough. We're gonna see what happens." And I went home on a Wednesday with no date in mind, nothing. Like I don't know what's going on, what's gonna happen. Gyms closed. And then we were really lost because we were like, okay, I have all this time in the world, and then what do I do? So we were traveling at that point from Virginia to West Virginia to go to the gym. I'm talking that's easily an hour and some drive that we were doing back and forth just to go to the gym. We were able to continue to prep, and then 2020, I go to my first national show, shredded, hard as it gets, and I show up, and it was a complete different crowd. It was a year where everybody was working out at home because all the gyms were closed. At that point, I was completely out of the mix. Like my feedback was like, "You're too big, you're too shredded, you're too hard, for a bikini kind of like body." We kind of like didn't like it. That was 2020, and then I remember it came out of that stage, called my mom, and I was like, "This is like the biggest failure," because I thought I had it. And I remember telling John, I'm like, "This is gonna go two ways. I'm either gonna win the whole show, or I'm gonna be dead last." Because there was nobody like I. It was like pears and apples. Like we were completely different. And like again, because it's a subjective sport, it's like you're either in the mix or you're not. And I wasn't. And I said, that's where I want to go pro. Man, I want to come back here to Pittsburgh and I want to go pro here. Like in the same, the worst placing with the same panel of judges. I want to go pro here. 2 years later, after doing all their national shows, that's where I went pro last year. But I went back to North Americans in Pittsburgh, 2022, complete different physique, took the feedback. Like I've never been sour about it. Like they're judges for a reason. It doesn't matter what I like. At the end of the day, I'm competing for them to judge me. So they gave me the feedback. I took it, and I was able to to be good enough for them in 2022 to get my pro card. So that's how my bodybuilding career kind of like happened. And then it also opened like a complete different side of me in the terms I've always been disciplined, I've always been motivated. But for anybody that competes at that level, that discipline and motivation is like a whole different like it's a whole different thing. Like it's way more than anyone could ever imagine because it sounds easier, but then when you're prepping for weeks on end and there are family events, there are birthdays, there are holidays, there are things happening that you can be a part of, and that's the thing to overcome. You're still there, you can still enjoy time, you can be a part of the event, you're just not eating. That's all, you know. But for me, being Hispanic and with a Spanish background and everything revolves around food. Like, what do you mean you're coming here and you're not gonna eat? Like, you know, like what? That was tough. My parents were not very supportive at the beginning until they came to visit. They live in Colombia, so they came to visit, and I prepped with them. We went to California, Napa Valley, beautiful trip, and I was with my Tupperware, my gallon of water, my things, and that's when they got kind of like the inside of it. They were like, okay, this is this is a lot. Like this requires a lot. I was waking up earlier than anybody so that I could go to the gym, and then we will be able to have the whole day to do whatever we were doing. So it was definitely like an eye opening for them, and that's when they're like, okay, now like this is a sport like any other sport. That's the thing.
Going back when you first were getting into it, what were those first 12 weeks like? What was your
Yeah.
perception of 12 weeks then?
I'm always on the second side where it's like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time. Like I'm always freaking out because there is a point throughout prep where you have that body dysmorphia where you're like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. At least for me, like it happens every time. I've been doing it for 5 years, and every time I prep, there is a point where I hit a wall, and I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm not gonna be ready, you know, kind of thing. And I think it just comes with everything that's happening. At the time, 12 weeks sounded like a piece of cake. You know, I'm like, 12 weeks is only like not 4 months, 12 weeks. You know, 12 weeks sounds doable. Anybody can do anything for 12 weeks, right? And then when at that first prep, I also was super naive to the sport itself. So I didn't know what to really expect. So I was literally at the mercy of my coach. And there wasn't necessarily a structured plan where you have like, okay, this is how 12 weeks are going to look like. We're going to push for 3 weeks. We're going to hold off a bit for a week. Then we're going to continue to push. We're going to make changes based on this and that. There wasn't anything. And I'm a science major. I'm a type A personality. I like to know what I'm doing. So I think that was the hardest part, not knowing what was the next step. I didn't know if I was going to have more food, less food. Like, and don't get me wrong, that's still the case in some like areas. Because at the end of the day, the judge is going by how your body is behaving, you know, in a week. And if you do need more food, then they'll give you more food. But if you don't, then they don't, you know. But they can't tell you exactly how much food you're going to get, kind of thing. But I think I was a little lost. I didn't also have like training sessions planned where it's like you're gonna have 5 cardio sessions a week. Okay, I know I have 5 cardio sessions. I'm gonna do Monday through Friday and get it out of the way. You know, I would train with him. We'll train in person, and so that was another thing. Like I was subject to his schedule, his timing, and that makes it way harder. You know, like prep is already hard. It's much more harder if you're doing it like following somebody, like literally physically following that person and adjusting your schedule to that person, right? So we would train and then he would like, okay, yeah, just jump on the stairs for 30 minutes. I wasn't mentally ready for that, you know, like, and that was the hardest part. At the beginning, it sounded like it was a very short time. When I was in it, I remember I was 6 weeks in and I'm like, I can't believe I'm only halfway. Like, this is crazy. And then when the time came where it's like, hey, well, yeah, you're gonna have to tan. That was the only time that I tan myself because I was too ashamed of going for someone to tan you. You know, when you're a bikini, you're naked. Like they just tan you everywhere. It's like body painting. And I'm like, I'm not gonna go there with like a random someone, you know, to tan me and anything. And I tan myself, and it was a complete disaster. Kudos to all the girls that do their tanning. They're amazing. They're my heroes. I did it once, and I swear, like I said, never again, and never again. I've never done it. I've always paid for my tan. Go in, get my thing done, and that's it. But it was again, yeah. To go back to the question, it sounded like it was easy, and once I faced it wasn't at all. I remember I had nieces and nephews at the time, and I was just like eating through them. I'm like, you guys need to eat everything that I'm craving right now. And I remember I'll go to the supermarket and just like grab everything that I was craving, and I started stashing it. And that's super common among bodybuilders. Like, if you have the willpower to not go to that stash when things get hard, then I almost find it like fascinating because you crave the most like weird things, because you're at that point you're craving everything. But it was tough. I don't think preps gets easier. I think your mind gets a lot stronger.
With that experience, was it like, were you ready to like jump back in? Was it something that was like, even though this kind of like was not ideal, it wasn't maybe, even though you had no expectations, I would say, even though like you don't really know how it's going to go, and even on show day you don't really know that first one, you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know like how things should play out. Because of that almost like whirlwind of an experience, were you just like ready to jump back in? Are you looking for a supplement company that can help take your fitness game to the next level? Look no further than All Sport Pharmaceuticals. Their cutting-edge supplements are scientifically formulated to give you the edge you need in the gym and in life. Whether you're looking to build muscle, increase endurance, or boost recovery time, All Sport Pharmaceuticals has you covered. And with a wide range of products designed for people of all levels, you're sure to find the perfect supplement for your needs. So why wait? Give your body the support it deserves with All Sport Pharmaceuticals. Visit their website today to learn more and start achieving your fitness goals.
No, I was. I think I was ready to do it because I'm very competitive. Like, in every area in my life, I feel like I think it's a healthy competition, but I'm very competitive to myself. Like, like I know I could do better. I placed, I think it was third or fourth or something like that in novice or whatever. But I saw the girls that won, and I'm like, wow, I think I can do better. I think there's a lot of room to grow or improve. So at that point, I did take an off season. It was a little longer than usual, and then we went back in with the same coach again because I didn't know any better. So if there's anybody that's thinking about competing and can get something from the podcast, is do your research about your coaches. Like, it is a service that you're paying for, so just remember that. And do your own research, because at the end of the day, is your health in someone else's hands, right? There's a lot that goes on. There are a lot of things like any other sport out there that are extreme, so you want to make sure that that person wants the best of you in terms of a competitor, but also a human being, especially a female. Like, if you're going to have kids, you need to know who you're putting yourself into. Like, you need to trust that person, and know that that person's going to have the knowledge to back up the process.
Yeah. It's almost insane like what a bodybuilding coach's responsibilities are in terms of, on multiple levels. Like you said, the competition side for one, because that's what you hired them for, is to compete and to get ready for the show, but also on just a health basis, because like you said, there's so many risks when it comes to putting the body in that state, not knowing how to manage it, not knowing how to put it in that state, manage that state for a short period of time, and then get out of that state.
And it's a shame because there are horror stories. Like, there are stories that are like really sad to tell and think about. It is a lot up to the client, but at the same time, when you're a new person to the sport, you don't know any better. So anything that you hear is going to sound good. And there is like a big myth of like, well, I'd rather an in-person trainer than someone that's going to coach me online. Not necessarily. Because that person that's online, that was my misconception. Like, when I started, I'm like, I don't know anything. I need somebody with me. My husband is an online coach. He works ridiculous hours, but he has been able to be present with his clients every step of the way. Like, he's the kind of coach that, okay, I need you to send me videos, so that I can correct your form, and we're connected in that way. And then I need blood work. That's super important. Like, it's not normal for females to not have a menstrual cycle for years on end. Like, we need to, and that's when the gut feelings and the logic should come in, where it's like, is this actually normal that I am, I don't know, let's say 25 years old, and I competed 3 years ago and I still don't have a cycle? Like, there's a little bit of logic that should come in at some point. Yes, we all want to win, but what's going to be the cost,
Mm-hmm.
And that's like why I would like to become for the sport. Like, I would like to become an advocate of that. Like, let's take a step back and maybe not win the next show, but let's get us healthy. Let's go get some blood work and see what's actually going on. Let's Let's talk about things. Let's tell your coaches, listen, I haven't had a cycle in this long. I feel like in John, in my case, like he's my coach now, but he's extremely detailed oriented, which is the reason why I ended up crossing that line. For me, it's always been like keep it separate, church and state, because it's hard, living with your coach, having him as your husband, it's not easy. Like it's really not easy. But he was always in the back of my head, like I would have a coach and I'm like, I kind of agree, but what do you think? And at that point, you have to be locked in. If you have a coach, you got to trust that process. And if you don't, then you got to get out. But you can't be like, have a coach here, have another coach there, because there's too many cooks in the kitchen and it's just not going to work. So there was a point where it's like, okay, no, you know what? Let's do it. I'm going to have you as my coach. I'm going to listen to you. It's going to be you and I. Let's do it. And as hard as it was, to the point where that was one of the questions that I got, it's like, how did you do it with your husband? We had to sit down and I was like, we need to have two Johns here. I need to have John, my coach, that's going to tell me what to do and when to do it. And I need to have John, my husband, which is the one I used to complain about, because prep is not easy, it's self-inflicted, but we're still humans and I still have emotions and I still want to cry sometimes, and I need you to be my husband at that point. But it's hard when we are this close to a show and our flight gets delayed and I get home at 7 p.m. and he's like, okay, you got to go train. And I'm like, what do you mean train? I'm behind like 3 meals. I wasn't prepared. He's like, it doesn't matter. You got to go get it done. I know it's hard on his end and it was hard on my end, but that's when we had to be like, okay, he's the coach and this is what I should do kind of thing. And John is super detail oriented. So he'll go from blood work, menstrual cycles, sleep, that people like, I sleep 3 hours. I'm like, why? Like rest, water intake, bowel movements. Like there are so many things, there are so many things that are key when you're prepping and when you're not, like you want your body to function properly. So I feel like that's the thing. Like it has to be a research where you can put the odds and there are big coaches out there that have some data. Go by that, like talk to the athletes. Don't talk to the athletes that are still with a coach, right? Because if they're still there, there's a reason why. Talk to the athletes that are not. Like, hey, what happened? Why did you leave this coach? I've left coaches in the best terms ever. It just didn't work for us, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot that goes into a coaching relationship, and just kind of going back to that safety aspect a little bit. There in any other, it feels like major sport, there's accountability for the athletes too, because if you follow the NFL at all, you saw the thing last year with Tua, Miami's quarterback, and he had concussion and a concussion in one game, and they didn't know. I think he had a concussion or something crazy happened, and he got put back in the next game, and he got another concussion, and then it came out like, oh, this is really, really bad. It's the possibility of severe brain injury is really bad. And that was like an extreme case, but it feels like to me, that's a little bit about like, it feels like at least that's a little bit how bodybuilding almost is in a way. It's like things get so extreme. They get so out of hand. People die in some cases before something hits like that's too far, instead of how can we, because athletes want to compete, athletes don't want to be like, oh man, this isn't right, so I'll just sit out. I'll just sit out this competition, or I'll sit out this year and fix this issue, especially at the highest levels, because those are the people who are vying for, that's their job, that's their career, that's how they get their money. We need some sort of safety net in those terms, to where it's like, let's have some protocols. Let's have, I don't know what the realistic like play out of that would be, because I feel like that would get expensive if you did every athlete's blood work, or if you did, some type of testing on every athlete some X amount of time beforehand. But I think there needs to be something that just that it allows the athlete to go as hard as they can go, and then put it in the hands of this other party to be this, the objective one. It's kind of like having a coach in a way. It's like you don't look in the mirror and just be like, okay, this is what I should do today. Your coach is the objective one. And I think that somewhere in bodybuilding that needs to take place for the safety of the athletes.
Exactly. And I feel like it's also, that's the thing. If you're not getting any blood work done before prep, if you're not, like communication is key for any relationship in, life, work, it doesn't matter. So the ways that we could probably improve that is one, is your coach actually having enough data about you? Like, is there enough data for him or her to make a decision based on that? That's one. And then two, if you're giving feedback to a coach, is your feedback taken into consideration? Like, that's key because that's when communication comes into play. So if I'm an athlete and I tell my coach, listen, I prepped for 5 years, so I know how tired I should be. But I also know there has to be a point where we got to pull the plug. Like it has to be like, okay, we got to rest because we got to recover so that I can continue to respond, which is one of the great things of having John as a coach. He could literally see me. He has my schedule. He knows what I do. So it was easier for him to be like, you're going to take 2 days to rest, kind of thing. But if I'm an athlete that I have an online coach and I'm telling my coach, hey, I'm not performing well at work, I don't feel great. I feel like I can't complete my cardio sessions. I'm shaky. Whatever the case is, like, what's what is your feedback being taken into consideration? Is there something there besides keep pushing? We got this. That's being said, because again, we go back to we have gut feelings and we have logic that should take priority. Like if it doesn't feel right, more likely it isn't right. So it's like that's when I have a lot of girls, especially girls, that come to me and they're like, "Well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?" I'm like, I'm not a coach, and I really have no interest in becoming a coach. That was another question that I got on Instagram. Would you ever be a coach? I don't want to say I would never, but at the same time, it's something that doesn't call my attention. Like I'm that type A personality. I like to have things under control. I don't like to just put all my odds out there and hope it works, kind of thing. So that's probably the reason why I'm not into it. But at the same time, like when they ask me, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I'm like, is there that communication? Are you talking to your coach? Are you giving your feedback? Is your feedback, like important enough to be like, okay, she's feeling this way. Like, let me give her a call and we can talk about it. Like, what's going on? I feel like that's important. That's also another thing that John added to his tracker. And it was like mood ratings, like emotional stress, physical stress. Like, how are you feeling? How are things going? It's hard if you're someone that doesn't prep because it's a lot of information and it requires time. But I think it's worth to have that much feedback so that you can make the right decision.
And you learn too, like going through, you talked about the different experiences a little bit. Your first coach was this way, and then you've had other coaches, and then now you kind of have a different experience with this, with your current coach. And the same thing is true with prep. You learn along the way. You learn how, like, you learn that your body feels this way when these other things are true, or I know that I can keep pushing even though I feel this way based on last time, or I know I need to probably pull it back a little bit based on another previous experience. So what do you think with that being said, what do you think some of the biggest things that you've learned about yourself, physically and mentally going through preps?
I think physically, I was that type of person that would be hesitant on like, is that actually doable? Like, am I actually able to build that body? So I think patience is like the biggest thing I've learned in terms of my body, like physical, like also the connection that I have with my body, like how I'm able to be super in tune with my body, like mentally and physically. And then when it comes down to mental strength, I think that's pretty much everything in bodybuilding. Like absolutely everything. I feel like the closer you get to a prep, the more you're able to know how much stress affects you, like in any type of way. Discipline, like when you really truly don't, it's not that you don't want to, it's that physically you almost don't feel like it. It's like, who wants to wake up at 4 in the morning every day and do cardio? Nobody. Like who wants to go out there when there's snow and go get a training session in? No one. Who wants to go train when you're having family time? Nobody. So it's like those are the things that I probably made me stronger mentally, and that's also the reason why I'm where I am right now professionally. Like when I came to interview for this new opportunity, they asked me like, okay, what do you do and everything, and I said, listen, the only thing I need time for is to train because it's my balance, it's my identity, it's who I am. It goes beyond only looking good, and like it's my mental health pretty much. So that's the only thing that I need to do. And I was like, I can train early in the morning, in the middle of the day, doesn't matter. I just need to be able to leave, go train, and come back. If I can't do that, then this is not an opportunity for me because I'm not willing to give it up, and I refused to believe that I had to give it up to make this work. So they said that I was totally fine, whatever. When I first started, there's the guilt associated with it where I'm like, okay, bye, I'm gonna go train and then I'll be gone for 3 hours and then come back. And there was a little bit of guilt that I felt that nobody put on me. It was just myself. And I was like, no, like you gotta get your head right because you were straight up with them. They said it was okay, it's fine, and they want you to succeed. So of course you gotta put in the hours, just like anywhere else. Like if you want to succeed, you gotta put in the time, right? But then also after that, they told me they're like our best and top producers are somehow related to the gym. They were either trainers, they were bodybuilders. Something about you guys make you that group of people good enough and disciplined enough to do what I'm doing right now. Because at the end of the day, it is sales, and sales is a hard area. Like it's a tough area to do because you're raised with the fact that you got to get a job, a 9 to 5, and a secure paycheck, and a 401k, and and that's what you have in your head. So when you go out there and you're like, well, if I don't do good, I don't get paid this week. It's scary, and I feel like you need that level of discipline to know and believe that you're gonna get what you're here for. And I think that was part of my bodybuilding journey. I feel like that trusting myself on that. Is it the type of people that the gym attracts, or is it the person that makes that happen? And I think it's a great analogy and it's a great thing to look back and think about because I also feel like people that train and that are consistent and disciplined and have goals and make them happen and they're committed to the gym, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be bodybuilding. It could be just I said I was going to train 5 times a week and that's what I'm doing. There's a certain level of discipline to do that because if you ask me, 80% of the times I don't want to go train. No one wants to do that. Like even though when you're there and it feels amazing, I feel like very few people. It's like every day I want to go train. Like I feel like, but it's doing it when you don't want to. Like it's forcing it because it's a habit. We are doing this. This is what we're doing. There's no negotiation. There's no option two. We're doing this. That's it. So I feel like it's the same thing in my case with sales. Like you said, it's when people not only when they say no, but when you face different scenarios, different objections, where it's like, well, the biggest one, unfortunately, is like, well, I don't even go to the doctor. I don't need insurance. Or I pay too much for insurance and I don't even use it. And I'm like, okay, let's take a step back. Like, are we listening to ourselves? Do you know? And I posted it on Instagram. Like, do we know how blessed we are for not having to use the insurance? Like, do you really prefer to have to use it and be at a hospital right now? Like, like it's and then I got a lot of replies and was like, yeah, like you're totally right. Same thing with I grew up in a home where my dad is an entrepreneur, he's a business owner, so he's always been smart in that sense. He's had business insurance, home insurance, car insurance, health insurance. Like there was never like, does it fit your budget? No, no. We make a budget for the fit because that's the priority. So that's how I was raised. So of course like I was I grew up in that home. So for me, it's kind of like a no-brainer. The first time I didn't have insurance was when I went from working for a corporation to self-employed, and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? Because we need insurance. We're super healthy. We do blood works more than the average person. We don't know what's coming, and the insurance is not for your doctor visits, just like your car insurance is not for your oil changes. It's for the what if. What happens if tomorrow at 30 years old I get a stroke, which can perfectly happen? Do I have $750,000, which is the cash price of a stroke in the United States without insurance? Do I have that sitting in my bank account? And if I do I want to give to a hospital $750,000 that I probably worked hard for? You know, so that's kind of like that's my. I've always loved to teach people however I can, like whether that is bodybuilding or life in general. In this case, this field had a lot. It allows me to do that because there's also a lot of misconception when it comes to, well, I make too much money, so I have to pay too much for insurance. And that's when I come in. I'm like, not necessarily. If you're healthy, there are other options, but no, we don't know that. I didn't know that before this. I was paying $600 a month for health insurance for John and I because that's what my corporate offered. And that's what I thought was the only option. So when I started this, I'm like, I can't believe I paid for 5 years, $600 a month for two perfectly healthy people. At that point, I should have stayed with my corporate because the employer has to pay at least 50% of the cost for me. It's by law, and I should have put John on a private plan by himself that should have been $230 a month. That would have cut my expenses in half. But you don't know that, and it's okay not to know that.
Right.
Like that's why I'm here for.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said about trying to think exactly what you said or how you said it. You don't find it in the budget, you budget for that. You're creating, and the same thing is true with money as with time. Like if you're trying to change your life, you don't take all the stuff that you're currently doing and then try to squeeze something else in, because truly you probably won't have time because everybody's just squeezing as much stuff as they possibly can into their day. You have to budget that time and you have to figure out like what's important for you to do in that time. Sometimes you have to replace it.
If you're 26 and you're just aged out of your parents' plan, you have no idea how much health insurance costs, right? Let's say you're self-employed and all these things, and the younger you are, the cheaper it's going to be. Let's just put that out there because you're going to have less things going on. And the insurance wants to insure you because they're taking a gamble on you at the end of the day, right? They're going to insure you hoping that nothing big comes up. But if it does, then they're going to cover your back, right? The younger you are, the less the chances for something like that to happen. So but if you're 26 and you've never paid for your health insurance, when I quote you, I don't know, depending on the state, $230, that might be too much. But that's the thing. It's like you're not going to see if it fits your budget. And I never ask that question. I don't like, does that fit your budget? No, it should. We're talking about your health here. So you got to work on that budget to make it fit at that point, because that's another thing. Like, I'm here to teach you, and I screen share with all my clients. There's no hiding here. Like, I want you to look at the plan and we can strip it down and we can make it super basic, and I'm going to be comfortable as long as you're comfortable, because I'm the agent behind that policy. So when you're at the hospital and you get a bill, who do you think you're going to call? Me, right? So I got to cover my back. If you and I are on the same page and you say, listen, I don't have that much money and I want to cut expenses and I want to make it super basic, I'm okay. But there's going to be, I'm going to archive your information like I do with every client. And there's going to be a side note. We reviewed all the options. I recommended that option. Client decided to go with option A because it was less expensive. So when something down the road happens, we can go back to that conversation, because at the end of the day, I'm not here to hide things and sell you things. I'm here to teach you. Okay. These are the options. You get to pick. It's your health. I have the top of the notch and I pay a good amount for health insurance, but that's because that's important to me. So I made sure that my finances fit that. It's more important for me to have insurance for me and my family if something happens than to go out and eat, especially in Florida where everything is super expensive. It's just cutting some expenses here and there to make it happen at the end of the day.
I think that it's becoming an issue because we live in this world, this culture where everything's glamorous. Social media, everybody shows oh, they're going out, they're looking great, they're getting cars, they're on vacation. It's all how can we one up what we did before? How can we fit in with what other people are doing? And there's nothing really glamorous or showy about insurance or saving, investing money or whatever it is. You can't really make that an interesting or eye-catching social media post. So it's people are just less likely to do it for it's such this, I don't want to be over the top about it, but it's kind of like a childish game that we're all playing with. How can we feel like we're the cool kids still?
Yeah, and that's also one of the feedback that I get from my social media, which is what I would like to keep, and it's how raw I am. Like, I like you. If I'm going to invite you to my life, I want you to live the life I'm living. Like, I don't want you to, like, just portray something that isn't there. So I feel like that's also why they connected so much during prep, because it was like, oh, she's struggling. Yes, I am. And I'm getting cravings, and I've cheated the diet before, and I've said it out loud. Like, there isn't any secret hiding. Oh, prepping is super easy. You should all do it. No, like, this is what it is. This is reality. I don't want to work out. I don't like working out every day. Like, you know, so I feel like when it comes to health insurance, and I started kind of like, it wasn't, I've never wanted to promote it on my social media. I wanted to, just like if I say 5 facts about me, that's one of them. This is what I do. And if you want information, I am here for you. I'm not going to like chase you into it, because at the end of the day, when we first start in this industry, I know it's going to be a little bold, but there are two people that we can't help. One is going to be broke people, because they're not able to afford it, right? But if I can help you on the private side, which is what I'm working with, I'm going to make sure to guide you or find you a referral partner to get a subsidy from the government and get that taken care of. Like, I'm still going to take care of you. I'm just not going to sign you because you can't pay for it. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to put you in a situation that's going to be even harder on yourself, right? And then the second people is going to be kind of like the dumb people, the ones that have those answers where it's like, well, I don't really need insurance. And I'm like, there's a certain, like, there's a point where I just drop the ball, because there's so much I can do. Like, if you want to know about it, awesome. I'll be happy to jump on a call with you. If you truly think you're blessed and never is ever going to happen to you, nothing, then good. You can leave that fantasy too. That's fine.
There's a certain level of like experience that you have to understand like what life is, like the reality that something could happen, or if it does happen, like what's going to happen to you, and if you have a family, like what the risks are. And it's great that there's people like you out there to educate about those things, but I just feel like there needs to be more of that understanding. There needs to be more, and I think it goes down the line of like economics and teaching people like just what money is, how it works, what happens, what debt is, what, all of that in a basic way too, like in teaching people along the way, not in one class, but, hey kids, let's learn about, money today. And then that's in second grade, we learn a little bit deeper about it. The same way we learn about, like 2 + 2 is 4. And then in high school, we're learning calculus. That should be the same with money. And by the time that we get, we turn 18, we go out into either college or the workforce, we understand like what we do in the next 5 to 10 years is going to greatly impact what happens the next 20 to 30 to 40 years of our life.
Like money management or budget management or financial management in general, along with emotional intelligence, should be more taken into consideration nowadays. Like when you're creating and helping build this new generation, because that emotional intelligence that I'm such a fan of, applicable in every aspect in life. Here where I work, in bodybuilding, with your partner, significant other, like it's just there. And we just don't know any better. Like you don't know that you truly have control of your emotions and your perceptions, right? Everything is neutral, and how you perceive it, that's how it's gonna come out. So I feel like those two topics should definitely be part of like generations that are evolving nowadays.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
With a lot of people these days are afraid of like technology and like things like artificial intelligence and chat GPT and things that can like basically it's great, but a lot of parents and teachers are afraid that like, oh, the kids are going to be doing their homework using this. Well, you can't, to a certain degree, there's things in school that you can still teach people that you can't learn online. Like that's just the truth of it. You can only learn some things from humans, from truly like hearing someone give their experience about it. And I think that that's the interesting way or interesting road that I think education can go down, is instead of the test based school system and like what everyone's I think grades do play a certain role because it's accountability, right? I think that's what grades truly are.
Yeah.
It shows people I need to put in the work so I don't fail. So I don't think that grades
Right.
going away is the number one option, but I think that basing your whole first 18 years of your life on your grades and the test score, I don't think that's the way that education should be. And I think now that we have easy access to information, why don't we start teaching people what they're not learning in life anymore, and that's truly how to be human.
Looking for a supplement company that's as serious about your fitness goals as you are? Allsport Pharmaceuticals is here to help. Their top-of-the-line supplements are designed to help you get the most out of every workout with ingredients that have been scientifically proven to enhance performance and recovery. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting out on your fitness journey, Allsport Pharmaceuticals has the perfect supplements to help you achieve your goals. Plus, with their commitment to quality and safety, you can trust that you're getting a product that's both effective and reliable. So what are you waiting for? Take your fitness game to the next level with Allsport Pharmaceuticals. Visit the website today to learn more.
I agree. And I'm a biochemist, and I mean, I aced all my courses and I graduated with a great GPA. Would I be able to replicate that right now? Absolutely not. And I never used it. But I do want to believe that the discipline of, especially being a biochemist where you had long hours, long labs, you can't drink, and the college drinking, partying was not my thing because I was in a whole different level at that point. So, like, in my case, yes, it started to create that discipline where it's like I gotta work harder not to judge anybody, but it's a harder career. Like I'm not the smartest in the room. I had to work harder to be able to get those grades. So I agree with you. Like it creates that discipline. It's like you've got to get those grades because otherwise you're gonna fail and you're never gonna move forward. But I also agree that there are so many more things that need to be taught nowadays that would make better humans, like in the future.
Yeah. But when it comes to insurance, how did you actually get into that field? I don't think we ever actually talked about that.
It was so funny. I had my corporate job 6 years, corporate America as it is. I was a operations manager for an orthodontic office in DC. So I started in the dental field as I graduated from biochemistry because my next step was going to dental school. Then I realized I didn't truly enjoy the field per se, so I went more into like the admin side. And then I ended up as a manager of an ortho office. It was great. It was beautiful, but at the same time, that's when I become a manager and I sit in an office like this and I'm literally waiting for things to happen. That's when I realize I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this for the next 10 years. Like I can't just sit here and wait for things to happen and then action. Like I can't sit here and do reports all day. I feel like my golden years are being wasted because I have so much more to do. Like there's so much more I can do. And I started like, what can I do? Like what can I do to not only to increase my income because it was very good, like for my age and the average and everything, it was a really good income. But it was like this can't be it. Like this can't be the limit. You know how corporations work here in the U.S. and the raises are minimal, and there's one person in each position, right? Like there's not multiple CEOs. So you gotta like it's a very long ladder to climb, let's put it that way. And I didn't see myself there for another 10, 20 years to see if one day I was gonna end up where I should have been, right? So yes, it wasn't a 9 to 5 because we have patients, but it was kind of like a 7 to 5. It was a set schedule, it was a set paycheck, set benefits, everything was set, right? And then we came here to visit my sister. John was he was already a full-time coach at that time. When he was like, I'm going online coaching full time, I was like, you're crazy. Because where is like the safety net, like where is our security, financial security and all that. But of course I supported him and he's absolutely killing it. And then he's like, let's move to Florida. So we moved to Tampa, but then I had to quit my job. And at that point, I think it made it easier because I wasn't happy where I was in the sense of I know I have much more to give and I just don't know how to use it. I don't know how to give because I'm already giving everything here, but I know there's more and I just don't know what to do, right? So I quit my job. John's like, just quit your job and find something that you like. I came for an interview. I didn't even know what I was getting into. At that point, I was taking interviews anywhere because I just was going for whatever was available at that point. I had a lot of interviews, and one of them was another manager interview at another office, and then this one. When I talked to 3 people that day, and they're like, "Hey, go take the exam, and you're ready to go." The exam, mind you, if you are an insurance agent, that exam, I was like, I thought I wasn't gonna pass. It's not easy at all. It's a lot of information. Everything gets mixed up. Like it's crazy, but I passed. And then I came and did it, and they're like, it's gonna be a lot of discipline. You're gonna have to like understand that there's a lot of objections that people, you're here to educate and everything. And I burnt all my boats, literally. Like I was getting all the Indeed emails for my open Indeed resume, and I was deleting them. I wasn't even reading the title. Still to this day, I don't entertain anything else because this is it. Like this is where my passion's at. This is where I feel myself. This is where I have an entire office of hustlers, people that work crazy hours, people that are here to literally hustle, like help families make money, live the life. Like here's where the mindset is like, I'm going to hustle now that I'm young, and then I'm going to enjoy later if the time permits, of course. Like hopefully we're gonna grow old together and we're gonna be able to do all the things. But that's where I was. I was like, I want to work now because John's home working anyways. I don't want to go home and watch him work. Like I want to be able to work anytime that I want. And eventually, once my business grows, I want to be able to work from home. I want to be able to take a trip to visit my parents in Colombia and still work. Like I wanted to be remote at that point. And the healthcare wasn't allowing me for that. So I get into this, and it's been a roller coaster, and it's been amazing. It's been very, very rewarding to say the least.
Is the test that you take, is that specific to a given area, or is it just all inclusive when it comes to like insurance?
Well, I took the 215, which is like it's a test for to sell insurance in the state of Florida. So you can sell health, life, and accident. In my case, I don't work solely with life insurance. I can add it to my health policies, but I am more in the health side, whereas health, dental, vision, like MedGuards, all that stuff. But once you take the license, you're licensed in the state of Florida, then you take a ton of certificates to be able to sell in Florida, and then the fun begins because then you start getting different certificates for other states, right? So that if you're in South Carolina, I'm able to help you in South Carolina. And then my other friend who's in Ohio, I'm able to help them in Ohio. And the people that are in Nevada, I can help them in Nevada. So that's when because every state has their own regulations. So every time you get another state, there's a bunch of certificates that go with it. But the exam, you only take it once. But it's that kind of exams that you go to a center, to take it, and then you walk in and the lady's like, okay, I'm gonna need your watch, and you put your watch and your phone in like a little locker, and I'm like, oh my god, it was like 250 questions. I don't even remember. I stayed there for like 2 hours. I walked out, called John, and I'm like, this is not happening. I don't think this happened. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know. It's so hard. So I passed, and it was great. But when I came to the office, a lot of people have failed it. Like it's more often than not that they fail it at once because it's so much information that you've never had. You don't study for this. Like you don't get a career, like a major in this. We're all new to it, and you study and get the test and go with it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So to get into some information to really help people, and this could be almost too broad of a question, but what are some different kinds of health care? Like, what are some different options out there? Is there like some general kind of like A, B, and C things out there for people, like options for people?
Yes. So the main thing to keep in mind is that there are three ways to get health insurance in the United States. One is through your employer. Okay, that's always going to be the best option for the employee because, like I said, by law, the employer has to cover between 50 to 100% of the cost of health insurance for the employee only. No family members, no spouse, nothing. That's the law. Now, if you work for a corporation that's really big and want to incentivize their employees, then they may pay for the family. That way, you don't even have to look around, you just get it, right? In my case, it was a big corporation. They were paying for me, but I went from $50 a month to $600 when I added John. So the jump was huge because they were paying probably 80 to 90% of my cost, but they didn't pay towards John. So employer coverage, best option for the employee. If you feel like you're paying an arm and a leg, then we need to talk because that means that the employer is not covering for whoever you're adding to that policy.
Gotcha.
Marketplace or public insurance, that's going to be subsidized. Like the government's going to give you a subsidy for that. That insurance is going to be a great option if one, you're qualifying for the subsidy, because then you're saving money, okay? Or two, if there's any pre-existing conditions. So if anything like a diabetes or something like that that's major, then that's going to be your best option, because legally those plans have to take anybody. Like they have to accept everyone. Healthy, not healthy, wealthy, not wealthy, everybody they have to take, because it's a government plan, right? Government funded. If you're healthy and you don't qualify for a subsidy, then those plans are not going to be a good option for you, because if they're accepting everyone, their prices are going to be much more expensive, because they have to have money to pay those claims. But they're taking a gamble on every single person, so they need to have the money, if something happens. That's marketplace, which is the option that self-employed people go with, because they don't know any better. So if you're 26, aging out, or if you're self-employed and you have marketplace, look at your numbers, and if you're paying a big amount, then sit down with an insurance agent and go from there. To give you a rule of thumb, you should add a 0 to your age to give you a range of how much you should be paying for health insurance. If I'm 30, around $300. So we go employer, best option for the employee; marketplace, best option for people that qualify for a subsidy or have pre-existing conditions; and then the third option will be me, which is insurance agent. So it's a private health programs, basically private health insurance. I go health based. We go over questions like HIV, diabetes, cancer, hyperthyroidism. Like we go over your health, and if you're a healthy individual and you're taking medications that will go through underwriting, then you can get preferred rates for plans that are going to give you better coverage. So it works basically like a safe driver's discount. The insurance company is going to give you a safe driver discount because you don't have a record. We can give you a better option in terms of health insurance because you don't have any record. You're healthy. You know, there are certain medications that are okay. There are certain conditions, like if you had a cancer and it was 10 years ago, we could probably pass. Like there are certain things, but these are going to be medically underwritten plans. There's a process, there's an application that we create. The insurance company goes over your health, and then you get either approved, declined, need more information, depending on the case. Those are the three options that are out there to get legally real insurance. There are some Medishare plans that are faith-based. I am not going to touch base on that. Everybody do their own thing. The only thing with those plans is that it's kind of like money in the pot plan. So it's like all the contributions are voluntary, and there's a pot with the money for those contributions. And if there's no money in the pot, that means no one's going to pay your claims. Only thing to keep in mind. Not legally liable for anything. And the insurance card says it. Like, they're not lying to anybody. Just that people, of course, getting health insurance is not a fun process. So nobody reads, nobody wants to do anything, But the insurance says it. Like, all your contributions are voluntary. We're not liable for anything. So at the end of the day, if you're in a Medishare plan like that, kind of like risking it because your finances are not guaranteed to be protected, which is like the main goal of having health.
Right. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I never heard that actually. So when it comes to trying to educate people, that's obviously like the number one thing, right? Because an educated person, an informed buyer, they're more likely to make a better decision. But how do you keep up with like all of this stuff with, all the terms, and how do you not just yourself, but how do you, really, how do you share that in a digestible way?
Right. I always do a screen share with my clients. Like I said, I want them to know me because some of the time, this is people. If it's someone from Instagram, then that's great. There's a connection already. But if it's someone that I don't know, it's like you don't know who's behind that phone. So I always get them on my screen. There is a picture of my family, John, my dog. Like, this is who I am. This is how I look like. This is my family. I like to show my licenses. This is my license of state of Nevada. It allows me to show up all the plants in the state for you. So first, let's create that report. And then after that, I go over the main things of the plan because, like you said, insurance is really like a very extensive topic. So I go over like doctor visits, co-pays, what's included, what's not, what's my worst case scenario. What is my worst case scenario? So three key things that I usually tell my clients is one, the network that you have, who is going to take my insurance. Am I going to be able to go anywhere? Am I going to have a restricted network? Like, who's going to accept my insurance? That's one. Insurances on the private side are going to have a PPO network, so you can see any doctor, any hospital in the U.S. So that one's solved there. Second is what is the premium? What's the monthly payment? How much am I paying for the insurance? The third one is going to be what's going to be my worst case scenario. Like, what if the worst thing happens to me? How much am I coming out of pocket? You know, and you want to have that number. Medi-share plans, like I said, short-term insurances, they're not going to have that number for you. They don't know, because those are plans that are going to be underwritten at the time of the claim. So when the stroke happens, then they're going to tell you. But then at that point, if they don't cover, then what do we do? You know, so those are the three key points. But I think how I ease my clients usually is I come with the policy. There's not an 800 number that you're going to be calling. Like, this is me. This is my personal phone number. This is where my husband calls me. If you have a question, I'm here for you. Like, I'm walking this path with you, you know? And I think that's soothing. And it's like, okay, well, whatever. If I didn't understand something, I'll ask her later, you know, because they have access. And at this time where nobody wants to be on a phone call, because let's be honest, everybody prefers to just text. A quick text where it's like, hey, this happened. What do I do? It's like, you know, like your problem solved. I had a client that was skiing in Colorado, and I got a text. It's like, I'm at the hospital. I crashed with somebody, and I don't know how many broken bones I have right now. I'm like, okay, you have accident coverage. Give your insurance cards, and we should be good to go. Another client was like, I ended up in the ER with an allergic reaction from literally seafood at a restaurant. But of course, if you're severely allergic, it was like residues of it, and they had to rush her to the ER. As soon as you enter the ER, that's it. Game over. All the bills are going to skyrocket, right? Because that's how it works. You know, you needed it now, and they were ready for you then. So she walked in, and they gave her Benadryl that we can get at CVS, literally. It was rushed to the ER, and the bill was $9,000, liquid Benadryl. And she's like, okay, what do I do? And I'm like, it's okay. It's an accident. So you have your accident coverage. You're going to pay $500. The insurance is going to take care of the rest. We're good. Then is when you're like, oh my gosh, thank God I have insurance, you know, because you didn't want to pay $10,000 for a Benadryl. When we see these GoFundMe for people, you know, that are at the hospital and the bills are high, I'm going to say it right now with 100% confidence. There is no GoFundMe out there that would pay the medical bill if that person didn't have insurance. It doesn't matter. It could be, it doesn't matter, because there's no GoFundMe that is going to reach $1 million or $2 million. You know, like there's really not amount of money that can help someone recover if there's not insurance in place. And on the other hand, like if you, the U.S., the law is that if it is an emergency, they have to save you. Like, yeah, with or without insurance, they have to save you. Like that's what they have to do at the hospital. But then if they save you and there's a surgery that's needed to kind of like fix you up or whatever the case is, they're not obligated to take you without insurance. They're not going to, because there's no guarantee that you're going to pay that money. The hospital's not going to put themselves in debt because you decided not to have insurance. So they're going to save you at that time. But if there's something needed later on that can wait and you're saved kind of thing, they're not obligated to see you. They're not. Same thing with this Medi-share plans that we were talking about with the money in the pot. I had a client that told me his wife was a week like due or 3 weeks due, something like that. Like she was about to have a baby. The hospital didn't take the insurance card that he provided because it's not real insurance. So they were like, we're not going to, what happens with pregnancy? It could cost you $3,500. Those as plans. Don't know what's going to happen, right? So at that point, you don't want to risk it, because if the baby's going to need help, then you want to make sure that that's covered. So at that point, the hospital was like, this is not real insurance. I can't book you with this, you know? Right. And the plans that we have, usually when they're medically underwritten and there's no like really pre-existing conditions or history, you should be qualified within a week max. Probably about 24, 48 hours if it's like quick. But it's for the big things. Like I feel like the analogy with the car in oil changes clicks. Like people are like, oh, well, now you put it that way. Yeah, you don't use your car insurance for oil changes. As soon as something happens, you pay your deductible and that's it. You're not dealing with anything, you know? So I feel like that helps people understand a little bit. So insurance.
In terms of like that big emergency, whether it's, you know, a certain surgery or somebody has cancer or whatever it is, it's going to be very, very expensive. Is there, is there any plan people should think about in terms of like, is one plan better for that worst case scenario, or is it just in terms of like coverage is coverage? Or explain a little bit into like what makes the difference between, like you said, you prefer that premier coverage, but what's the difference between that and maybe something a little bit lesser?
It depends on your situation. In my case, particularly because I'm self employed and John is self employed and we have no will to go back to work for anybody, I want a plan that's going to be guaranteed renewable. That means that it doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to be covered in that plan until I'm 65 and I'm eligible for Medicare, right? Which is public senior insurance kind of thing. But that depends on the scenario. If I am 30 and I'm a stay-home mom, and eventually I might work for somebody, and my husband works for a company, and his employer coverage is good for him, but it's not good for us, then we'll sell a lower, more basic plan because chances are your husband may change employers that could offer you a different coverage. Usually, when I have self-employed clients, I like to, like I said, I'm going to give you all your options. I'm going to make you decide what you want, but I like to show you what's available. So I like to say, okay, there's this plan. It has a max out of pocket of $3,000, meaning if you have a stroke and we go back to the 750,000, your worst case scenario is going to be 3,000. Now, when that happens, that's called kind of like a silver bullet. So once that happens and you pay your 3,000, you can't use it anymore. We have to put you in a marketplace plan. We have to put you in a public plan because at that point, you already have a pre-existing condition. You had a stroke, right? Now, if you're self-employed and you think you're going to be self-employed, then I'm going to give you this plan because this plan, if you had a stroke and we set the deductible for 5,000, you're going to pay your 5,000. And if next year you get cancer, God forbid, you pay your deductible again, and they're going to cover you for cancer. If cancer takes 5 years of treatment, then every year you pay your deductible, the insurance pays whatever's left. So those are kind of like, it depends. That's why I like to build them to my clients' needs. Like, what are you looking for? Is it someone that's transitioning from one job to another? Is it someone that might eventually be employed by somebody? Is it someone that started their own business and will be self-employed forever? Is it a family? Like, it depends. It depends.
Do you ever feel like it's kind of hard to keep up with what is out there, like all the different options and all the different kind of like this, if you're in this situation, this, if you're in that situation?
A little bit, but like I said, like I'm pretty set in my ways. So if you're coming to me and you're telling me I'm self-employed, I'm always going to be self-employed. I'm going to pitch whatever's out there, but I'm going to tell you what I would recommend. And very rarely that's going to change because it's going to be like, it's going to be based on your needs. I know that's going to have you covered till you're 65 if you're self-employed. So I know you will be covered. I think what changes the most, it's the things that you can build in to your insurance. Like I have clients that are usually like, no, I don't want to put dental vision. I'm fine. I'm good, whatever. And then I get an email later. Hey, do you mind adding dental vision for me? Like it's the add-ons that are usually kind of like iffy. It's like, okay, do I want to, because there are also benefits that come with a plan. Like if you were diagnosed with cancer, the insurance company sends you a check for X amount of money. Let's say that you were 26 and you're like, no, I don't want to pay that much. I want to pay X amount a month for that. And then when you're 55, you're like, hey, I'm thinking about it. I should pay more for that. Then we can't do it. Like you have to, it has to be at the time that we did that application. But I feel like plans that I work with, the most important thing is who's going to take my insurance, and I have that covered. How much am I going to pay if something happens? It's really hard to beat 1,000 or 5,000, depending on the deductible. And then, what was the last one I said? Video network, catastrophic coverage as low as 3,000, and then no deductible for copays. Like you can't beat free. If I'm telling you, you can go see your doctor with no deductible and no copay, like there isn't anything better than that kind of thing.
Right.
You got to think about your family too, because if that person passes away for whatever the reason, those bills are coming to you. So now you have not only those bills, but then funeral bills, and then and maybe kids if you had kids. Like it sounds hard, but it's reality, right? We're all going to die at some point. So I think it's just being prepared and not being selfish with your family, because it always seems like it's out there. It's never you. It's always like other person, like it happened to them. They did the GoFundMe. It was them. Like it's never you, but we don't know how close we are to it until it happens.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.
And if you are healthy and you do have insurance and you're not using it, use it. Why are you not using it? Why aren't you getting your physicals? Why aren't you going to your OBGYN if you're a female? Why aren't you getting your regular exams that you should be getting to stay healthy? You know, like, I get a lot of people, and like, especially for females out there, there are so many things going on. Like, why aren't you getting your blood work done? The plans that I work with offer chiropractic visits. Why aren't you using them? Like, if you have it and you're not using them, it's on you. You know, you should be using them. You should be going to get your physicals. You should be seeing your doctors. Like, should be wanting to stay healthy. And if anybody has any questions, and you know, I'm happy to like teach. I'm not pushy. I'm not selfie. I'm literally here to teach. And I usually drop the ball and let you make the decision. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. My Instagram is usually where I'm most active, which is crazy. But we at this point in age, we don't have yellow pages. So I even choose my next restaurant for my cheat meal on Instagram. So my Instagram is my first name, Andrea. Well, it's Andrea Ray _ IFBB Pro. And, you know, you can find me on my phone number. It's like 636-578-235. Shoot me a text if you have questions, ask for quotes, just so that you have enough knowledge, and then make the decision when you're ready.